if they're a peer and y'all are figuring this problem out together. The second tip that I have is around engaging the interviewer. It's kind of related to changing your mindset, but first you have to flip the bit on your mindset to say, okay, this person's a peer, we're solving this problem together. Now that I've got the mindset that we're in this together, now I want to figure out how to actually engage them to get more information that I'll use in my simplification and synthesis process, and also engage them to make sure that if I'm missing something big, they have the opportunity to give me that, point me in a certain direction so they can get the signal that they need on the question, and also so that it's engaging for both of us. For the GCA interview, I want you to switch your mindset from this person is assessing me to this person is my peer and we are going to solve this problem together. So I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I'm going to check in. I'm going to say, hey, did I miss anything? Are there any other questions I should be asking? Are there any other factors I should be considering? Is there anything you want me to zoom in on? Is there anything you really want me to focus on? Here are the 4 things that I... Hello, happy Monday. Welcome to the AMA. I think there's a couple of you joining. I think most of you are from the Dream Job Ready community, so you know a little bit about who I am. I'll just start with a quick intro while we get set up here. Just as a heads up, there's usually a bit of a delay between me and you. So it can be anywhere from like 10 to 15 seconds. So just be patient with me if we're having any issues, if I'm not getting to your questions quickly enough or your follow-ups. So a quick intro about me. I'm Coach Erika. I spent 5 years as a hiring manager at Google. I conducted over 1,100 interviews across product management, program management, software engineering, test engineering, engineering management, basically all R&D roles. And since then have become a founder myself and am now also an interview coach. And I help people who are going through job searches. Used to be a little bit of a nice to have, but now with the current talent economy, I'm seeing more and more people enlist the help of a coach to unlock their job searches. So these AMAs are my way of giving back to the Dream Job Ready community, which is a fairly recent new community that I started on Discord to help people who are looking for jobs, who are going through unemployment, getting laid off, or just having job search, even if your job search is going swimmingly, having some companionship on your job search, people to ask questions to, get intel, kind of get a pulse of what's happening on the ground. I get this through my coaching practice, but I realize that many people that are job searching are relying on fairly outdated information from the internet, content marketing, blogs, even stuff that was written 6 months ago isn't really terribly accurate given how much the talent economy has changed in the last 6 months, given how much big tech has changed in the last 6 months from a talent perspective. So these are like my way of kind of providing the intel that I'm getting through my coaching practice, through Dream Job Ready, through the internet, through Twitter, through LinkedIn, where I have followerships, and kind of give it back to the community. So the way that we like to run these is I'm going to allow each of you to ask any questions that you have of me. Henry, nice to see you. Nice to meet you in person-ish. So most of the people that join have either, been following the YouTube channel for a period of time. If the YouTube channel is now turning 2 years old. So if you've been watching from the beginning, this plant behind me was a wee lass. When I first started the YouTube channel, my hair was also like at least 8 inches shorter. So a lot of growth around here in the last 2 years since starting the YouTube channel and trying to open source my knowledge and open source the information that I have for job searchers. So it tends to be people that know a little bit about what's going on. But as we go through this in between questions, I'll tell you a little bit more about what I offer as a coach, what I offer at scale, what I offer that's free, what I offer that's one-on-one and personalized. So you have a full sense of like if you are trying to unlock your own job search or if you have one coming up and you want some help, what help is available to you. So with that, the way that we like to run these is you guys ask questions in the chat. I will answer as many questions as we get. Usually we run out of questions than we run out of time. If we go over at the hour point, I'll probably be tired and hungry and give up, and we'll have to regroup next week. But I'll answer every question in the chat that comes in the chat in order. And then usually I answer the question. I try to give a lot of context on why I'm answering the question so it can be useful to the broader audience, people that watch this after the live, and then other people that are watching it that don't necessarily have all of the context around kind of the question behind the question. So I try to give very robust answers. And then I'll check back in and let you know, hey, question asker, if I didn't fully hit the spot there, let me know if there's a follow-up question. So just as a heads up, that is how I like to run these. And then once we run out of questions, I usually give people like a minute for last minute kind of like, oh, I just thought of this kind of things. Or if you've been lurking and nervous to ask a question and you're scared to take the mic, realizing that nobody else is asking anything, so you have a chance to go. I try to give that at the end, and then we'll wrap it up for the day. As a reminder, these are every Monday at 5 p.m. I usually ping the Dream Job Ready community to see if I have at least 3 people that are going to attend, to make sure that it's worth the time and the effort and that I'm not going to be sitting here alone. So if you aren't part of Dream Job Ready, there's a link in the description of this video. Just click learn more, read more under the video description, and you can grab a free invite link to Dream Job Ready. And if you're in Dream Job Ready, thanks for coming. And just know that if you want to attend any future week, I always like to ping and just make sure, because I've had a couple of times where I was alone and it's a little bit of setup, a little bit of tear down. So it's nice to know if I'm going to be here with people. So okay, so we've got 2 people that have popped something in the chat. Neither of them are questions, but I'll just read them aloud and let you all think about what questions you might have today. There's so much going on in the world of tech between all of the layoffs and what just happened with Silicon Valley Bank. So I'm really excited to hear what questions y'all have. Henry says, hi all, nice to meet you. Henry here, wave. I'm really into the wave emoji as well, so thank you for using that. And then Sneha says, hi, Henry and all, nice to be here and meet you. Sneha, good to see you too. I'll just give it a break and take a sip of water and see if any questions pop in. Otherwise, I'll think of something from a recent coaching conversation as a conversation starter. So I'm going to start the conversation. This has actually been something that people that come to this AMA have asked me to do. I get nervous because I don't want to be off on a soliloquy talking about things that y'all don't care about, because these are really for you and not for me. But I was told multiple times that it's really helpful for me to just like bring something to the table to spark some thoughts, to kind of like set a theme for the day. So what I'm working on this week, so I write a newsletter called The Career Whispers on Substack. There's free and paid subscriptions. And every week on Wednesday at around 7:17 in the morning, Pacific time, a new article gets released. And I work on it for usually a couple of weeks beforehand and do a lot of research and spend a lot of time thinking about what I'm going to say. And one of the things that I realized that would be really helpful for folks that are listening to, YouTube videos of mine, part of the community, and subscribers to the newsletter, is really helping not tell you what to do in your job search, but really tell you what to do when it's not going the way that you want it to. Because I think there's a big difference between hearing like, this is the best way of doing something, and then hearing it when you need it, when you're actually in debugging mode, like what exactly am I doing wrong and how exactly can I determine that that's the root cause or that's a likely cause, and then how do I fix it? So I started a series last week called Debugging Your Job Search on the Career Whispers. And last week, I just put together kind of like a high level, if your job search is not going the way that you wanted, if you're not getting callbacks after submitting your resume, if you are not making it past the first, the recruiter screen or HR screen or whatever, like the first quick call is, if you're not making it past your first round interviews, or if you're not getting past later round interviews, some companies have multiple rounds. And then of course, if you're not getting an offer after the final round, here are the likely things you're doing that aren't working for you, or the likely causes. And then here's some remediations. And then for the next few weeks, I'm actually going to be going into each of those problems and the remediations. So this week, I'm starting at the top, and the like most common, biggest challenge in people's job searches is really feeling confident about their written career story, which is effectively your resume. And if you write cover letters, your cover letter. But really the written and formal way that you talk about your career and the way that you ask people to consider you for jobs is, in my mind, it's actually a career story. It's not just your resume. And so when people are applying and applying and applying, I actually am working with someone right now who kind of shocked me, or starting to work with someone. They sent me a tweet or Twitter message saying that they had applied to 1,196 jobs and only received 20 callbacks. And that is not a good ratio of callbacks. And so I realized like this person has spent all of this time taking the time to apply for 1,196 jobs with absolutely minimal traction without realizing some heuristic around at what point do I stop and start debugging as opposed to continue doing what isn't working? And like there's the, age old adage, it's like if you keep doing what's not working for you, that's like the definition of crazy. But when you're actually in it, it's hard to see that you are doing crazy things. And so what I try to do with this series is give people numbers so that you can kind of approach your problem solving and debugging from a data perspective. So there have been some studies that have come out using LinkedIn and other data that suggests that if you're not getting called back for at least one for every 6 job applications, that you're below average. The average job seeker will get 1 callback for every 6 job applications. We are not, if you're in tech right now, we are not in a normal market. And so if you're not getting a callback for 1 in 9, so that's 11% of job applications, then I think that's the point where you say, hey, something's not going right. And what I want you to do is not wait until you're at 1,100 to say something's not going right. I want you to do it at, number 9, number 18, like multiples of 9. If you're not getting the 11%, 1 in 9, 2 in 18, 3 in 27, something is not working with your resume and it needs to be fixed. So I just wanted to share those stats with you. All of the other numbers around what is a good ratio of passing the recruiter or HR screen? What is a good ratio for passing first round interviews? What is a good ratio for getting past later round interviews? What's a good ratio of final round to offer? All of that is in the last episode of the Career Whispers. You can find the link in the description, the link to the Career Whispers, and it's post number 10. So if you're interested in that and you're debugging your own job search, I definitely suggest you start there. And then I will be, over the next some number of weeks, revealing what specifically you can do if you diagnose that is your issue and how to actually debug that. So just something to share. I think that number I think is really helpful for folks that are at the early stage of their job search. They've put in 15 or 20 applications. So what I want you to do is go look, actually look at how many applications you've put in. Some of them will be hard because you'll just have one confirmation email from some default email from an applicant tracking system. Try to figure out how many you've applied to. And if you're above 18, start looking at is your hit rate at least 11%? If it's not, then rather than continuing to apply, the highest leverage thing for you to do is actually sit back and figure out what you can debug about your resume. And in that first post introducing this series for the Career Whispers, I give you some of the top 5 things that I see people doing wrong in their resumes. And there's tons of services out there that will look at your resumes. On Pocketboard, which is the startup that I founded, we have a resume writer. She's pretty exceptional and super affordable. Happy to give referrals to her as well. But there's a lot of great content out there about what to do about your resume. And then if you want personalized help, that's always available. So that's going to be my quick starting point. And I see there are some questions, so we'll dive into those. If anyone wants me to keep talking about resume stuff, I'm happy to. But also as a heads up, Wednesday at 7:17-ish in the morning, that post will be released to the world, and paid subscribers will get the actual debugging how-to guide, and then free subscribers will get a deeper level of understanding of what you might be doing wrong on your resume without necessarily teaching you exactly what to do to fix it. Okay, I'm just going to copy this question from TPM. Good to see you again. I hope things are going well for you in your job search. The question is, hi, Erika. I was wondering about any updates for open jobs market. Well, I have some very exciting updates for folks that were looking for FANG jobs. So if you've been watching my lives and if you follow my channel obsessively, which I'm going to assume none of you do, you will know that I made a prediction. I both predicted the Google layoffs and then also predicted how quickly thereafter Google would resume their interview process. And I predicted that it would be, for most companies, it's 4 to 6 weeks. And I predicted for Google, it would be a little bit longer. And some good news for folks who are, I see that you're a TPM, so people that are TPM, PGM, I'm actually seeing Google ramping back up its pipelines. So keep in mind that Google did layoffs in the US first. Global layoffs are much harder to coordinate and they take longer, especially for Europeans. And so that actually has been happening as late as just a few weeks ago. They were kind of still wrapping that up. So it has taken a little bit of time. But what I'm actually seeing is recruiters reaching out cold to candidates to rebuild their pipelines. And they're telling candidates, hey, we are stocking the pipeline again. We're not going to be hiring until Q2, Q3, but we want to go ahead and get you in, get your first round interview done, see if you pass this screening, and then we will figure out team matching as headcount gets released, as it's clearer in Q2, Q3, and then we'll bring you on for final rounds sometime in that. And so I actually have 2 candidates right now that I'm working with that are program managers who are working with Google as like part of this, like refilling the pipeline. And I think there's some interesting things to think about here. If you are someone who is, looking at one of the FANG companies and wants to get in one of the FANG companies still, despite, changes that are happening. And it's this realization that like these companies work like a well-oiled instrument. And so when hiring just like stops suddenly the way that it did on January 20th at Google, and then before that, Meta was much earlier, so they're already kind of hiring again. And then we'll see the rest of them continue to like pick up with those same kind of like with that same delay post layoffs. You'll see like weird artifacts. And so I really encourage people who are going through interview processes to like watch the videos. I have videos on Amazon, Google, Meta, and I touch on Apple a little bit for program management, TPM, product management roles. So if those are roles that you are part of it, even if you're not, I've had somebody who was going for an account executive role at Google who watched all of my videos and like still passed their Google interviews and did really well because there's a lot of like non-role specific content as well. But like get as much information as you can about what it's supposed to look like. And you will see that it's not going to be exactly the same because this well-oiled machine is like kind of gearing back up, and it's not an easy process to gear. It's like, they say turning a battleship is hard. It's kind of like gearing back up a factory for the first time. That was like a really good factory, but it was shut down for 6 weeks. So keep that in mind. And then any like other updates for the job market beyond FANG. It's like, look, startups are going through a lot right now with SVB. I think it was a really stressful weekend for most executive teams. Good news at, last Sunday, the FDIC is covering all of the investments and all of the money that had been held by a Silicon Valley bank. And so I think startups are breathing a little bit easier, but they had a really rough week last week if they were banking with SVB. And then other banks are looking a little bit tenuous right now as well. But I think we're seeing like things, the backups are kicking in and people are kind of continuing to be able to operate. So I think that for the rest of the job market, we're seeing like late stage startups continuing to hire. I have multiple candidates going through Cruise right now. And a couple of other, large late stage tech companies. So they're still moving forward. Startups are hiring the same as they were before, like in my last update around startup hiring. So you're seeing like they're being really specific, they're being really particular about roles. They're trying to hire for really strong fit. Nobody's growing at all costs anymore. That's no longer sexy. It's no longer the way that people are growing. So, make sure for companies that you're really looking after and you're really interested in, you're looking at their job pipeline, you're looking at posted roles, and you're taking action when you see one that you're interested in. In the past, it used to be actually very hard to figure out if a company was really hiring for a role because companies were getting awards from LinkedIn for being like the highest growing company. And they like one of the indicators for being the highest growing company was simply like having a ton of roles posted on your job site, which I have always strongly disagreed with. And I think it is a really crappy practice. But now companies aren't doing that. And it was something that companies almost like it became like a FOMO thing. And so it was like, we'll just keep these roles posted, even though we're not looking at any inbounds and we're not out, we're not outbound sourcing candidates because it makes us look like we're growing a lot. And it was kind of a game. And so I think we're seeing a lot less of that now because growth at all costs and like the rewards for overhiring are not there anymore in the market. So really long update on what's happening in the job market, but that's what's happening in tech. If you have any more specific questions, happy to answer them. Okay, Henry says, love the debugging the job search post. Great, Henry. It was actually the most read post ever. And part of that makes sense because my readership has been growing since I launched the newsletter about 10 weeks ago. It's been growing pretty exponentially. But it was really interesting to see. I have about 750 subscribers, but as of, I think this morning I looked, and over 1,000, I think it was over 1,100 people, 1,100 reads. So that means that people are reading it and then they're reading it again. And that brings me a lot of joy because I put a lot into the newsletter and I love seeing when it helps people. Parul, wow, interesting story, gives hope, but love debugging approach as well. Yeah, the 1196, I'm still kind of aghast about it and really excited I kind of see myself as like a scientist of job searching. And so when I find a really interesting case like this, it's like, I'm like the Dr. House of job searching. So I'm like, ooh, that's a really surprising number. And I'm really excited to dig in and figure out what's going wrong here. So, I'm really excited to get to debug with that person. All right, Henry, you have the next question. Let me just copy it and paste it so everybody can read it. When it comes to behavioral situational questions, I prepared an answer that tells the hiring manager about a project I've worked on in the past to answer with the STAR plus learning approach. It's a two-part question. Hold on, let me get the second part in there. Okay, so that's probably not going to show up super well beneath me because it's really scrunched, but I'll read it out loud. Question: what's your view on not doing this type of response for every single question and maybe giving a straight answer to a question like, what's your greatest strength / weakness? Okay, well, you're talking about a couple of different things here. One, so situational behavioral questions are questions that put you into a situation, a theoretical but likely workplace situation, and say, hey, what would you do? So a situational behavioral question to me is a type of behavioral question. And I'm pretty pedantic about this because I think it's important that people prepare not just for pure standard behavioral questions, because employers are asking many more questions, 3 different kind of behavioral question types today, and people are just prepared with STAR. But I think so situational questions are like, hey, Erika, you're interviewing to be the product management lead for YouTube. You walk in tomorrow and you find out that YouTube Mobile experienced a 40-minute outage yesterday. What do you do? And those questions are really there to like understand like how you go about gathering information. How do you synthesize that information? How do you decide what to do? And then how do you proceed forward? And so, but I don't think that's what you're asking. I just wanted to stand on a soapbox and talk about situational behavioral questions. Henry, I think you're talking about behavioral questions, like standard, what I call pure behavioral questions. And my view is, what's your greatest strength and weakness is actually not a behavioral question. What's your greatest strength and weakness is a factual self-awareness question. So absolutely, if I'm asked this question, which I hate getting asked this question because it's such an easily preparable question, so I don't ask this question and I don't like when people ask me this question. But if I got asked about my greatest strength or my greatest weakness, I would answer it by first just like stating what it is, just like throwing it out there. And then I would explain more about it and what I've done to overcome, if it's a weakness, what I've done to overcome or support my growth in those areas. And if it's a strength, I would talk about how I use it to create and drive outsized results. And then I might follow up with a STAR plus example, because I really believe in the power of giving examples. It's like if I had just told you situational behavioral questions are when people put you into an imagined scenario, but I didn't give you the example of being a YouTube product leader, it wouldn't have made as much sense to you. It wouldn't have felt as real. And so I generally answer even self-awareness, kind of strictly behavioral questions. I tend to give examples. I might be a lot more brief with the situational context. I might be very brief with the results. So I coach people to give results when you're answering a true behavioral question, to give results in the short term. So we achieved the project, we achieved the key success criteria, we delivered it on time, and then give the longer term strategic business results. So this unlocked our ability as a company to enter into a new market, which had a TAM of X, which we were able to, address 4% of that market in the first year and significantly increase the scope of our platform and add over 10,000 users. So you're taking it another step further. If I'm giving a more brief answer about a strength or a weakness, and I'm just trying to illustrate how I've overcome a weakness or how I'm working on one, or how I've used my strength to deliver outsized results, I might give a much briefer, just like give the result, either the long-term result or the short-term result. So I still believe in the power of STAR++, even on answers that are theoretically supposed to be short, quick answers. Because I think that you can make them short and quick. Parole. Okay, so this isn't really a question. I'm not going to paste it in, but I will address it. So if we become a paid subscriber, we get extra information on how to fix. Can you give some examples? So a couple of things. I'm working on, so Parle is referring to being a paid subscriber to the Career Whispers, which is my weekly newsletter. I'm working on a couple of really cool things for subscribers. So only about 2% of my readers are subscribers. So it's a very small portion of the population, but they go out of their way to buy me coffee every week, and it means a lot to me. And they kind of keep me going. Like this week has been a little bit rough, and I'm working really hard to get everything out on time, but I have to give up my weekends and nights to do it. And so I want to give them outsized gratitude. And so one of the things that I'm working on for paid subscribers is actually a free tool to help you debug. So a place where you can input your data and get like an actual like result that says, hey, based on this data that you've provided, these are the likely causes. This is the likely root cause of the problem. And then here has how to fix it with like a guide that you can quickly click into and start working on. And then in the individual, like, so that's something that's going to come probably at the end. I'm working on it now, but it's becoming a bit of a monster. And so it's going to take me probably through the end of the series to get the full like debugging tool ready, but that's going to be available only to paid subscribers. And then during the series, the way that the post will work is some portion of the post, like this week's post is like 40% of it, maybe less than 40, it's probably maybe like 25 to 30%. I'm not finished writing it yet, is free subscribers. So it will tell you like, hey, if you're having this issue, like here's a common issue with resumes. Not enough white space. Like you're forcing me to skim your resume. Here is why skimming is hurtful to you. Here's why you want to control the narrative. Here are ways you can do that. So very high level ways, like how to bullet your bullet points, how to, where to put your contact information, how to think about what things need headers versus not needing headers, what are some decent like parameters around like margins and white space. But in the bottom portion, it's actually going to show before and after pictures. So here's someone's resume that I fixed, and here's how it looks afterwards, like real examples, plus like more specifics and more kind of like opinionated approaches to fixing the problem. And part of this is because like if a general person is reading the newsletter, they don't necessarily know that much about me. They may not totally trust my opinions, and I'm very opinionated. And so I want the paid subscribers who already like buy into what I'm working on in my approach and what works for my candidates, 93% of them. I want them to see those very opinionated like stances. Like I feel very strongly about fonts and font sizes. And if I put that in the free subscriber, like the general population that's reading it might think that I just have like unfounded strong opinions. And so I try to give a lot more value to the paid subscribers, but also I believe that they believe in me more. And so I'm able to be more opinionated with them. So hopefully that's helpful. And then Parle, I see you have a question too. Let me paste that in here. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. My question is the challenge in the current market is predicting financial health of a company. How can you dissect more on their stability and future plans? So I love this question because I'm at a startup. I'm at a Series A startup, and I've started to notice that candidates, two things. One, we just try to upfront tell our candidates what our financial position is so that it's not something they're like, how do I formulate this question? How do I ask this? We're just like, nope, this is where we're at. This is our runway. This is how much money we have. We're going to fight into our very last breath to make this happen. And it's interesting because in the past, you would think like, okay, I'll go to a bigger tech company. They have more money. I'll be safer. And I think because of all the layoffs, that equation is being questioned. And part of the reason it's questionable is like, you could be at a Google that has, God knows how many $1 billion literally in cash just sitting somewhere, and they'll still lay off people because they are subject to market pressures and because they have to think about how they're growing across all of these different areas and they're resizing their footprint all the time. Startups have one thing, like they're doing one thing and they have to do that one thing really well. And so they're going to give every last gasp of air into that problem before they give up. And so at a larger tech company, they might shut down an entire division to reformat their footprint and to think about how they want to have the span of their platform. And you might just be kind of like an innocent bystander victim of them saying, you know what, maybe we don't want to do this type of work anymore. Whereas at a startup, you're like, we're going for it until we can't anymore. And so there's like this, from an economic perspective, just asking what the runway is gives you a lot more information. And that really applies to like Series C and earlier startups. I think D and later, you start to get into like companies are trying to platformize their multi-product. They're moving a little bit further along. And so you might still get yourself into a situation where you're on like someone's pet project that gets cut. And so I think there's a lot of questions you can ask to understand how stable they are, what their future plans are. There's nothing I can do to protect you against companies that are just lying, or like misinformed recruiters and misinformed employees. And it happens all the time, right? Like we've all heard of various fraudulent startups that like employees were not told what was really happening. But if you are interviewing at any startup or tech company, you're eventually going to meet with someone who's fairly high up in the food chain, in the sense that like they're at least your boss. If you're interviewing at a startup, you probably will meet the founders, and if you're interviewing at a late stage startup, you'll at least meet like some member of the executive team. I think that's really the time to kind of like understand how they're thinking about growing, how they think about there are actual metrics that are used by venture capitalists to decide if a company should be investing in growth or focusing on solving its core problem and its core value proposition. There's something called the Rule of 40. It's a perfectly normal thing to ask about. So you can certainly ask about where you're at on key financial metrics that you're willing to share, and like how they should, you should do your research. So you're asking good questions about these financial metrics, but you can certainly ask these questions. And not every company is going to give you like, hey, here's an open book. Here's our entire like cap table, financial reports, et cetera. Obviously, if the company is public, watch the investor calls, learn how to read investor earnings call paperwork, or get someone in your life who knows how to, and like really have a stronger opinion about whether that public company that has public reporting is going to be a good bet for you. And then if it's private companies, you have to just ask really good questions. So it's actually a great prompt, and I think that it might be a good thing for me to either write about or potentially make a video about. I'd want to do a little bit more research first. But when I talk to early stage startups, I ask about runway, I ask about their thesis, I ask about their investors and then I look up their investors' liquidity. So there's tons of, I think, back channeling you can do to get more comfortable with early stage startups. And then later stage startups, I think you can ask about how they report their financial metrics and how they're doing on some of these key LTV, CAC, Rule of 40 benchmarks that exist and that you can look up. Okay, let me know if there's any follow-ups on that, Parul. Next question. Okay, hi Erika. Thank you for spelling my name right. Thank you for this session. Do you have any advice for someone who wants to transition from the public sector to the private sector? This is so this is super interesting. I mentioned at the beginning, I like working with people that are in really extraordinary and interesting circumstances because it keeps my job interesting. And I've actually worked with quite a few clinicians. My day job is in healthcare, and so that kind of makes sense. But I've worked with architects and educators, so like middle school and high school teachers, and help them get into tech. And I'm trying to think if I've worked with anybody public sector. I've worked with people that work in government jobs, but they work in tech and government jobs, and help them transition into, private sector tech. I think that there are, so for those folks that I have helped, I think the biggest things that helped them were, one, mapping. And this actually applies to anyone, even if you're going from like Series A to Series D, or private or public company to early stage company, or one domain or industry to another. You have to do a lot of mapping. And I'm going to give a specific example here because I think it will be really illustrative. So I started my career as an engineer. And in the company that I worked at, I was on the East Coast, and we didn't have product managers. So I didn't even know what a product manager was. Had no exposure to product management. Engineers basically owned engineering and product. And then we had marketing people, which did a little bit of the product work that we would think of today as like Silicon Valley tech product. And then when I moved to San Francisco and started working in a company that had product managers, I was like, oh, this is like a separate job. This is like this makes sense to me. And instead of having it wrapped in with engineering. And so, but it also meant that I had a bunch of product management skills because I was an engineering manager. And so I was doing project management, I was doing engineering, I was individual contributor engineering, I was doing engineering management, project management, portfolio management, and product management. I was responsible for the entire product line that my team owned. And thinking about the market position and thinking about everything from like, the stickers and the labels and everything about, it was a physical product. And so when I wanted to get into product from there, I had to map. It was all about saying, hey, I have done these activities, I have owned these things, and these things line up to a product management job. So then in my like professional statement in my resume or my professional objective, I said, engineer with product management experience seeking a product management role in digital health. And then in my actual resume, I rewrote it such that it mapped from what I was doing as an engineering manager / product manager unknowingly, and how that maps to a product management job. And so when you're coming from public to private, there's a lot of mapping that has to happen because we don't have the same job titles, we don't have the same job levels. Program managers in government are kind of like a hybrid project portfolio and product manager, and they're not the like program managers that we think of in tech that are like more like strategic project managers. And so that, I think the biggest advice I would give you if you're going from private to public is mapping, like really deeply understand what you're applying for, where you're coming from, and where like how those things match up. And if you do that in your written career story, in your resume, and in your verbal career story, you're significantly more likely to like lower the cognitive load for the people on the other side of the table who are trying to understand where you're going to fit in their org, in their company, in this industry. Hopefully that's helpful. All right, I'm going to give a last call on questions. I'm going to take a quick swig of water. And Power, I see, thanks for answering helpful. Good, I'm happy my answer was helpful to you. And if anybody else is waiting to ask a question, this will be our last call. Also, if you heard my dog barking in the background, that's our Coach Erika mascot, Zorro. He's usually sitting right here with me and sometimes interrupts. Today, he decided to just bark. Okay, glad that was helpful. Glad to be helpful. Okay, while I'm waiting for this last call, I like to give people a solid because I know that not everyone types super fast if you're thinking of a last minute question. I've already mentioned the Discord community that is totally free that many of you are part of, and I'm glad to have you as part of it. If you're not part of the Discord community, think about joining. We're looking for people who are going to be very active and participating. I actually wrote a Career Whispers article about how to be active participants in job searcher communities, and I see that people that are active in our job searcher community in Dream Job Ready find jobs significantly faster from those who are lurking in the background, wallflowering, and like not as actively participating. And so I wrote, I think it was last week actually. So I think it was, or 2 weeks ago. So post number 9 was all about how to be an active member of job searching communities to get outsized results in your job search. Other things that I can do to help you. Free things, my entire YouTube channel is a bunch of free videos. You'll see this plant grow up from the baby that it was 2 years ago to the giant monster that it is today. As well as get advice on everything from how to approach interviews, how to talk to your recruiter, what are the interview processes at top companies, to how to negotiate your compensation, and much, much more. So definitely check out all that free content. You can also be a free subscriber to the Career Whispers, and you'll get a ton of free advice there as well. And then join these AMAs once a week. Those are all the free ways that I can help you. 2 ways that I can help you that are paid. One is First Round Ready. I have helped over 200 people now land jobs in tech. And the average person spends somewhere between 5 and 12 one-on-one hours with me. And I've packaged all of the learnings and coaching that I normally give to people one-on-one into an insanely affordable, less than $150 digital course that's 77 minutes long, comes with a free workbook so you can get started with like actual preparing for your interview. The link to that is in the description to this video. And it also it's part of a broader kind of like interview operating system approach that I have developed and built over 2.5 years of being a coach. And so it includes, there are additional workbooks that you can purchase to like fully prepare in less than 3 or 4 days for a first round interview. And it's the exact same tools, tips, frameworks, approaches that I use for the 93% of people that have worked with me and landed dream jobs in top tier tech companies. And the last way I can help you is through one-on-one coaching. I have 2 packages on coacherika.co. One helps people who are preparing for their, basically at the very beginning of their job search all the way through landing their first round interview, passing their first round interview. And the vast majority of my compensation comes after you pass a first round interview. And that's intended so that our incentives are aligned and you feel confident that I'm going to do everything I can to help you pass. And then the second package is for people that are going into their on-site final round interviews. So once you've gotten past that first round, once you've gotten past the recruiter screen, you know that your like resume is working for you, you know your career story is working for you, and now it's a question of just like really intensively preparing for passing it on site, and then of course negotiating your offer. The average person that works with me increases their their compensation by $82,000 a year. So it's like an absolute the ROI calculation would baffle Silicon Valley Bank and everyone else who's thinking about financial numbers right now. So if you are preparing for an on-site and you want to increase your chances and your confidence and your compensation, that's a great package. And then of course you can work with me one-on-one in one-off sessions that you can purchase one at a time through, there's a link in this video as well, but also on my website through Pocketboard, which is the startup that I founded. Okay. TPM, Erika, thank you for answering the question, providing such deep insights and great ideas today. So not a last question. So I think that we are wrapped. Wonderful having all of you on today. I know I've been canceling lately. Like I said, if you're part of Dream Job Ready, I will always ask before I cancel just to see if there are people that are hoping that I will join. So definitely appreciate you all joining today. Loved all your questions, super thoughtful. And I will see you all next week, assuming that we have quorum at 5 p.m. Pacific time. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everyone.